All right, Jason's here. We can start. So, all right. So, wins or successes? Give me some good news. What's happened? I went to St. George yesterday. It was nice and warm there, but that was great.
I just followed up with someone in my SOI yesterday, talking on the phone, and they've got an investment property they've had for a long, long time that they just aren't interested in keeping anymore. And so I just said, well, let's list it. And they've been going back and forth. I don't know. I got an investor. Anyway, when I called them yesterday, they just said, yeah, let's just list it.
Nice.
So, okay, great. And so we just did it over the phone.
Awesome.
And it was done.
Yeah, those are the hardest ones. Yeah, that's awesome. That's good. Good job. Congratulations. This is why, actually, as we talked about SOI, gosh, so important. I mean, well, in fact, maybe I'll share with you guys a story.
And here's the thing too, that this is a person in my SOI I, upon first contact, wouldn't have kept in my SOI. I was just kind of like getting people out of my SOI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking for the red. And because this is a broker, like they're their own broker. They've just done real estate for years and years and years. So when I called them, they said, actually, I might have something for you. Just keep in mind, but they're so busy doing all sorts of other stuff. They're not like full-time
Gotcha.
real estate. So that's why I just kept following up with them, and they just said, yeah, let's just do it. I
Awesome.
just don't have time to deal with it. Okay,
Wow.
so
Yeah,
now
when you can list another agent's property, that's pretty good.
oh, there you go.
So. Good. Awesome. Good. Who else? Wins or successes? What good things?
I got an appointment tonight.
Awesome. From door knocking or?
Kinda. I was just driving through the neighborhood and I seen somebody outside, so I stopped.
Oh, okay. Good. Awesome. Good job. Congratulations. Good. Who else? Paul?
I had an opportunity to do some door-to-door with an agent, and I'll tell you what, that is really refreshing. Most individuals are pretty open for a conversation. We were able to pick up 3 leads in about an hour and a half. It was apartments, and I think what was helpful is that these apartments were in the upper range. People are paying between $1,300 and $1,600 a month. And you know what? That is a house payment. That's a house payment. And it was really, really good. I mean, it's just, and you gotta go, you know, at odd hours because you gotta catch people there. But I'll tell you what, it was really, really good.
Cool. So so you went with them, the idea being saying, I'm a
Yeah.
loan officer. I need
He's
to be approved.
the
Awesome.
621 agent, and I'm the loan officer, and
Awesome.
depending on where the conversation went, you know, we were able to field the question, or you know, it was really, really rewarding. I mean, it's fun. It really is. I mean, you know, you think about it, I gotta go knock doors and get rejected and so forth. But every conversation we had was it was enriching. It was rewarding. It was in context, and it was good stuff.
Awesome. Good job. Congratulations. Good. So good idea. And it
So I
sounds
was
like
under
Paul will
the
go with you.
Impression that you couldn't go to apartments, so.
Well, so yeah, great question. So in terms of apartments, so typically they all do have no soliciting policies or whatever. So usually I just say go until they kick you out. So, you know, 'cause
And they didn't kick us out. We did, and they have really, a lot of them had no soliciting things. And the agent, I said, well, you know, there's some sensitivity there. He said, no. What's the worst they can do? They can tell you to leave.
worst they can, yeah, is they'll
And
come
the
and
people
tell
that
you.
had no soliciting, they're the ones that were talking.
Yeah, a lot of times that's how it is.
Because they don't get bothered to pull up.
Yep.
Nobody wants to talk to them. So when you do, they're like, oh, well, great, I'll talk.
Exactly. So yeah, that's kind of,
Yeah.
that's the idea. Is I just always tell people, I have seen situations where somebody had like a flyer they would leave in the door if they weren't there. And I've had the apartment complexes call and say, hey, tell your agent to come back and get those things. But yeah, I mean, it's worst that's gonna happen is they're gonna tell you to leave. So. Cool, good. Who else? Wins or successes? What good things?
2 good appointments yesterday.
Awesome.
FYI, credit unions, sorry, in the mortgage side, I tackled 6 local credit unions in a couple areas, talked to loan officers. Not one of them said they work with an agent. So
Wow.
I put together a pretty extensive first-time homebuyer package, and yesterday I was the first-time homebuyer advocate, and you know that's my focus, and
Nice.
you know actually And the funny thing is, did one at 10 o'clock and sent me an appointment with them at 2 o'clock.
Really? Wow,
So,
cool. Feel sorry for the credit unions today now.
yeah,
Everybody's leaving here, we're going to the
I
credit
already
unions.
touched Draper.
He's like, let me tell you guys who I've already got. So, good, awesome, congratulations, good. Who else? Wins or successes, what good things have happened? All right then, so,
Woke up and breathing.
I know, exactly, right? So Paul's here from Citywide. Any mortgage related questions, anything he can help you with that way? Well, I just always like to start with that in case if you got anything mortgage related, he can help.
Well, and I was gonna say that we have we've got multilingual competency, financial terms, Spanish specifically. And, you know, there's the language, and then there's the business and financial terms. We've got some competency there, so if you are running into a situation where you need some multilingual capabilities, just let me know and we can take care of that. So, but anyway,
Any questions for him?
thank you.
All right, I guess you're off the hook again.
Okay.
One of these days, I want you guys to like stump him with a really seat
That's
back
my favorite
things.
seat.
Did anyone go to the NAREC show on,
Oh, you know, I actually was gonna ask that too.
It was
The
great.
53 million in one.
it was wonderful.
I guess you were the only one. Awesome. It was good, huh?
No, it was wonderful.
I actually coached my son's baseball team. We had a game during that. Otherwise, I would
That's
have
wonderful too.
gone. But actually, I do too. Although I left there that game. I have never been so mad after a baseball game as I was that one, and it was because the other coach told me that every other coach in the league hates me, and
Oh,
said how horrible of a coach I was, and I was like, wow.
wow.
So
That's
anyway,
sure.
I was mad
Yeah.
when I left there because the truth is
Well,
we're the
sure.
only undefeated team in the league, so I think that's
Oh,
the
it's-
reason.
Oh.
I think that's the reason everyone hates me. But
Low peak high schools over here.
no, I know, right? So, anyway, I think that's more why they hate me. But anyway.
I'm sure that's a load of bull.
Yeah, I know exactly. So, or at least I hope so. So anyway,
They're just jealous.
and then Timber emailed me, told me I was boring, and so.
I knew you were gonna bring
Why?
I didn't know you had such a horrible team.
Oh,
right?
if it makes you feel
Wednesday.
better. Well, hey, if it makes you feel better, Timber, you know what Andy told me this morning?
What'd you tell him, Andy?
Well, go ahead. You could just.
And
I'll let him say.
did fall asleep to him.
He's like, hey, I went to sleep watching your video last night. I was like, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm
Oh.
feeling real.
Well, it was
you?
to your
I know,
yeah,
just-
to your credit, it was
I know,
watching
I
at
do.
1:30
I'm joking.
and
Hey.
nobody in here spoke.
I just tell.
If nobody asks a question, then it's
Now you
It's
know
not
I
all
like
on
having you here, right? So anyway, all right,
I'll just be
good.
the question girl.
So, any questions before we get started? Good segue. Anything you want me to talk about? Anything you need help with? Anything that's non what we're talking about today that you want me to cover?
You said this class is a follow-up for last class, right?
Correct. Christopher.
It's, yeah, so it's not like a big question or a major one, but just as far as lead generation goes, if you pretty much keep the same prospecting and same things as a growing market versus a downturn market, do you usually see yourself change your prospecting, like for sub owners in this, if there's a
Oh, good question.
downturn market, do you?
So I'm going to repeat that just because with you being on the back row, if somebody's watching, they wouldn't hear it. So
Okay.
ultimately, what he's asking is if as the market shifts from being where we need listings right now to there's an abundance of listings and it's more of a buyer's market, right? Then do you shift in how you're going to focus on your prospecting? So it kind of somewhat, I mean, that's kind of a yes and no question. At the end of the day, I would say for the most part, no, you're not really going to change anything. Everything really stays pretty similar. You may change a little bit of what you're saying and how you're approaching people, but in terms of the prospecting method you're going to use, no, I would say I don't think it's going to change. Now, so the only reason I would say yes, why that could potentially change is in our current environment right now, there's like very few short sales out there. And so if you were to go out prospecting for short sales, that probably wouldn't be the best idea right now. So that's what I'm saying, yes and no. It kind of depends on what you're doing. The stuff that we really were focusing on Tuesday that we were going through in terms of for sale by owners expireds, which I want to quickly build that list again, at least in terms of the major ones, as we talk today. But in terms of those, no, really, honestly, I don't think it matters at all. And in fact, in today's environment, prospecting, I mean, would you say doing for sale by owners today is good or a bad thing?
It's good.
It's tough.
So tell tell me why you think it's good, tell me why you think it's tough or tougher.
People are showing up with bags of money and just wanna buy a house.
Yeah, so the challenge that we're having potentially right now with the for sale by owner is they're actually selling, right? Because there's not a whole lot of inventory. Yet, with that being said, we've still got a lot of agents here in the company listing for sale by owners. So that's why I would say, I wouldn't change, because as the market gets more towards the buyer, more of a buyer's market, and it's gonna be harder for sellers to sell, then this for sale by owners need us even more, so.
So I have some houses in my neighborhood that are for sale that are not mine. But I see them, definitely game.
Yeah, what are you doing wrong?
So, but they're not selling. They've been on the market for 2 months, 3 months, and they're just not moving. I think they're priced appropriately. They're my neighbors, I wanna help them out, I'm not as worried about the commission side of it, but I realize I can't just go say, hey, this is what's going on. But I have never received a phone call, a door knock, a postcard, or nothing, except for there's one Century 21, and I did receive a postcard from her. Is there anything I can do to help them, or just leave it alone?
So great question in terms of how could you help a neighbor who's listing you, it's not ours. You still actually could go out and market that property, meaning, let me back up.
Just listed for that property?
Well, so you would have to do it similar, think in terms of like on our website, we have got every other company's properties on there. But what does it say if you go to century21.com and you search properties, what does it say where it tells whose listing it is? Do you guys know? So go on the internet and take a look at this, but what it'll say on Century 21's website is courtesy of, and then it has who the broker is, the brokerage. So I would say you would want kind of a process. You could create a flyer for them, and what you just wouldn't want to do is in any way make it look like you're saying it's our listing. So you would need to put on there courtesy of whoever's the broker is. So
Is there a certain size that because I know there's like marketing, there's a certain size ratio.
So
For
I
your
don't,
name versus their name,
on
is
that
an issue, you know?
So typically, great question, in terms of marketing for when you're doing something that the name of the brokerage can't be smaller than 50% of the font of whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So, but in terms of this, if you go and look on our website, it's just in a regular size font. So in terms of that, the division when they're saying that your company has to be 50% of the size, is more just in terms of they want the marketing piece to know who is generating it.
Okay.
So I don't think in terms of putting the courtesy of, I don't think that would really matter, so.
Is it a good opportunity to build a little bit of doubt with your neighbors in the current region and see who they're using to buy the next house? I definitely think there's some of that.
Which now hang on, I wanna tag on that real quick, because it is okay to talk to the people about the next home they're gonna buy right now, even though they're listed with somebody else. You can talk to them, as long as they haven't signed agency to buy something else, so for sure, you could go talk to them and say, hey, I know your home is listed, I'm not here to talk to you about listing your home, but have you got somebody helping you in the purchase of the home, your new home?
Okay.
See what they say.
Thank you.
Yep, good. What else? Jason?
I got a client that wants to maybe put some offers in on some properties, possibly starting today.
Okay.
And she's from out of state, she doesn't understand our buyer broker agreement.
Okay.
She doesn't really wanna sign it still, she wants me to use it, be the realtor agent for her, but she doesn't wanna sign the buyer broker agreement. I try to explain to her this Utah law and a brokerage rules, but she still is not sure she wants to do it.
Okay, so here's what I would recommend in that scenario, is what I would say is you could fill it out and have it be property specific. To just say, so, I mean, ultimately, what would be the concern of why somebody would wanna do that?
Well,
I guess my question is specifically for her is what is it about the agreement that she's hesitant about, cause the fee that she, your fee, somebody else is paying, so what is it about it? Is it this, she's tied
Well,
directly to you only?
she's gonna overpay what the fees are to me too, so.
What do you mean?
We'll say like on one of them, it's a 2% fee,
Oh,
she's gonna raise my fee up to 6%.
6? Wow.
I'll take her.
Is she
I'll
from
put her to sign it.
California? Somebody's California.
I know.
Well, yeah, so I guess that's still my question, like I
Yeah, but
I
I
wanna
guess,
dig
well, in
into
fact,
She's out of state and she's bought property all over the country.
cause it's a pretty standard thing
And
to.
she says she's never had to sign it before, and so she's trying to figure out why the state of Utah is the first time she's.
well, so here's what I would say is that's how I would probably explain that to her is I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 99.9999999% sure she did sign it every other place, the agent just didn't explain to her what she was signing. They did it, which this is actually a great segue to what I wanna talk about today.
Her lawyer usually buys the properties for her,
Okay.
but she buys millions of dollars of
Cause
properties.
there's no way
So-
you can represent somebody in a
Without
transaction
it,
without
yeah.
that,
I mean,
so.
And that's
Cause
what I
an
told her.
agency is a federal thing, so guaranteed that she has signed it, she just may not have known what she was signing, and like you say, it maybe her attorney told her to do it, but this is a perfect segue of part of what I wanna talk about today, so I'll kind of segue a little bit on that. And I'm always hesitant to talk about this in here because what I don't want you to do is leave here thinking, oh, good, it's okay to not sign agency. Because what I'm gonna tell you is less than 2% of the time will agents outside of our company sign agency prior to writing an offer. And there are very, very few companies that are going to be training you and teaching you that you should be getting a buyer broker agreement signed early on. Almost always outside of this company, agents will go out and show properties until the client is ready to purchase. And then what happens is then they will have them sign agency at that time. So part of why I bring that up is when you're out prospecting and somebody says, I've got an agent, or even different, sometimes people will want to even ask, are you working with an agent? That should be, even though I know at the board, I had some tissues in here and somebody keeps stealing them.
Out of your pockets?
No, not out of my pocket, I had a box, I've got one right here. My nose just felt like it was about to.
Because you're so sad today.
Is that, I know.
I'm good sad today.
Okay. So at the board, they're teaching you what in terms of asking people about if they're working with an agent? What were you taught?
To ask
Like when?
as soon as,
Right away.
right away.
Yeah, so,
It's like one of your third, fourth questions.
yeah, see, I wanna try to clear up some confusion on this, cause I wanna be real specific on this, cause otherwise you leave here misunderstanding what I'm saying, but I do not want you to interfere with somebody else's client. But what makes somebody a client?
Signing it.
Yeah, as far as the state is concerned, it's a signing agency. As far as the division, that's the division, as far as the board's concerned, why would the board tell you should be asking people, like, are you working with an agent?
Blind
So there
agency,
isn't, sorry,
Say that again?
the blind agency
Okay.
aspect.
Okay, is that what you were,
I was gonna say assumed relationship or.
okay? I don't think, I think that's what our thinking is of why they're doing it, but I don't think that's why they do it.
Is it the legal side of it that if you help procuring cause and they sign with someone else, they possibly owe 2 commissions?
Okay, so somewhat could be, I think, a little bit that way, but ultimately, if there is, if you interfere with somebody's agency relationship, what's kind of the repercussion that comes to you from that?
Is that disciplinary? Is that, does the.
From who? Yeah, from the board, right? So if the board's the one who has to discipline you for lack of a better word, but don't you think it would be in their best interest to just kind of be like, hey, you should ask right off the bat?
So it like trains you so that they can just avoid the whole thing.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with it, but here's the challenge. We, in terms, and I'm guilty of this, so I know you guys are, other agents are guilty of it. We refer to somebody as a client when we don't even have agency signed. We'll refer to, oh, I got this client. Well, do you have agency with them? Well, no. But, so if you don't have agency signed, do you really have a client? Yeah, no, you really don't. And as far as the board and the division's concerned, you don't have a client, right? So you don't have all of those same fiduciary duties. And if you then got an appointment with that person, are you now breaking our code of ethics? I guess that's what I really want you to answer for me.
Did you say if you got an appointment?
If I get it, let's say that Kevin's got a quote unquote client, but he hasn't signed agency with them. I go and ask for an appointment with them. They agree to meet with me. He now gets mad, wants to complain, whatever. Does he have a leg to stand on?
No, he doesn't. No.
Have I done anything wrong with our code of
No,
ethics?
you have not.
Right? So, to me, this is where I say asking the question about do you have an agent you're working with is like irrelevant. Because here's the challenge with it. When you ask that question, how are they gonna respond?
Yes.
Or no. But why would they say yes?
Because
They don't want any commitment, they don't wanna be tied up to an agent.
Yeah, see, here's the funny thing is we actually train them to say yes.
I was just gonna say that people like to avoid like putting them in that corner to have to answer that way, and so, yes means I know an agent, I used an agent 5 years ago, so are you working with an agent? Yeah, like if I were to do something, there's somebody I could work with.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of how most people interpret it, and that means nothing.
Correct. Yeah. So, and part of it I think is we train them to say yes. And here's what I mean. Let's say that, I'm glad you sat on the front row today, Bethany. I'm gonna use the front row. I'm gonna show you what happens. Here's how we train them, okay? So I want you guys to be aggressive and ask for appointments, okay? So, let's say I call in. I'm calling about the home on Primrose Lane. What can you tell me about it, Rob?
It's got 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and 1 half bath.
Okay, thanks. Bye. Well, he didn't even ask for it. Be aggressive. Ask for an appointment. Come on.
No,
Be aggressive. I'm calling you. Tell me about the home on Primrose Lane.
Okay. So it's got 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and it's 410.
Ask me if I'm working with an agent.
Are you currently working with an agent?
No, I'm not. Then what are you gonna do?
would you like me to show you the house?
Carry us.
Would you like me to show you the house? When do you wanna meet?
Oh, I'm not sure that we do. We're just curious. We're just looking. I hung up on you. I called Carrie now.
The second row is vacant.
That's right.
Second row
So,
is
okay,
vacant.
no, I'm just curious. We just, just was wondering.
Why were you wondering?
Are you
What?
looking, are you
So
looking,
why were you wondering?
Oh, we were just curious.
are you looking for a home in the area?
No,
Are you looking for a home at all?
well, no, not really.
Why are you wasting your
Well,
time?
I have this.
You guys are setting this up great. Okay, so I hang up. Okay, so no, now here's
What
what's
do you
going on
want
in my
to
mind. I said no, I don't have an agent, and they started asking me all these questions. So now I call back the next
No,
call.
you say no, no.
I'm calling about this other home on Birch and Pine.
Yeah, it's an awesome home. Are you currently in the market for a house?
No, ask me if I'm working with an agent. Remember, I'm showing you how we train them. This is how we train them to say,
Are you working with an agent?
kind of.
Okay, well, awesome. Are they gonna bring you to the house to show you the house?
I don't know. If I asked them, they probably would.
Okay. Have you sat with them and filled out paperwork
No.
to start looking for homes?
No.
Okay. If you wanna stop by the home, then I can show you the house and we can talk a little bit more about.
Oh, I don't know that we're really interested that much. We just were curious.
That's okay, and I'm happy to help you guys figure it out. So,
So look what's going on in my head. Okay, I said no, they pounded me. Now I've said kind of, and he's still asking me for appointments. So I hang up, we go to over here to Bethany, just ask me if I'm working with an agent.
Are you working with
Yes, I am. And then what are we trained to do?
Hang up on them.
Yeah, well, what most agents will do is say, well, then you need to be calling and talking to your agent about it.
Great, where would you like to set the appointment?
Yeah, so we train them because of that. Now, let me give you the flip side of that I've had happen. I've had situations where the person calls me and says, and I said, no, this is before I learned not to ask the question, where I said, do you have an agent? Nope, we don't. Great, well, when would be a good time I could show you the home? How about tomorrow at 3 o'clock? Oh, awesome, great. We show up at the house. Get to the house, and guess who's with them when they show up?
An agent.
Yeah. So why would somebody call and say they have an agent when they don't, or call and say they don't have an agent when they do?
Well, one, they want in the house, and the second is they don't want to have to explain why they do or don't have an agent to you.
Thank
They
you.
just want the information.
See, they will lie to you. It is the most irrelevant question. Now, Dave and I are both on, did you hear what we were talking about? No, Dave and I are on the professional standards committees at the board. So when you have like a complaint against an agent for interfering with agency or whatever, it's gonna go first to the professional standards committee, grievance committee, which when Dave and I were both on the grievance committee, it actually kind of meant something, meaning like it would come and we would debate this back and forth of should there be a hearing for that? And the grievance committee would kind of then decide that. Well, I think it's just starting this year, right? They said pretty much everything that goes to the grievance committee is gonna get passed on to the professional standards, which means then it would come to a committee, which there's tons of people on the committee, and if it goes to a hearing, they pick 5 people off the committee, and then you go and sit down and you get to hear both sides, and then you make a decision one way or the other. So that's part of why the board teaches you need to ask if they're working with an agent. I always want to say it's irreverent, but it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to ask that question because they'll lie.
Yeah.
So
So do you or don't you?
do I or don't I?
Do you or don't you ask?
No, don't. And I'm gonna explain why here in a second. Go ahead.
Me and Russ had a case and we had to listen to it. A guy shows up to go look at houses. The realtor apparently said, are you working with an agent? And he says no, so he goes look at houses.
Oh, yeah.
Schedule a second day.
Yeah.
He comes back again, but this time he brings his friend. So the agent says, who's this? Oh, it's my friend, he's in real estate.
Oh.
He didn't say anything else. He didn't say, what do you mean you're in real, he didn't say anything. So took him and his friend out and showed him houses, and guess who wrote the offer? His friend. He's driving a realtor and someone else around looking at houses, and it was amazing, he did figure this out.
Well, the realtor is wrong,
Save a little gas
because he knows
money.
what he's doing. Yeah, he knows what
What's he
he's
doing
doing.
wrong? What's he doing wrong?
Well,
If
he's
Russ
taking-
wants to show, he and Kevin Allison, we'll go with them all day long. When Kevin wants to buy a house.
No, she's saying that
The
you would be
realtor-
the one in the fault.
Didn't
The one,
disclose.
The realtor that's a
He said he
friend
was in real estate.
did not disclose.
Then what?
Well, is there any ethical wrong of not
He says
disclosing
he's
his
in
real
real
estate?
What do you do?
Yeah, but he did
the
say it's a
agent was the
realtor.
one
He
that
didn't
didn't ask him.
No, that's what I'm
What do you
He
mean?
said, okay,
you're
let's go.
investing or
Yeah,
what?
you
He
should
didn't
have
say,
asked
are you an
questions.
agent?
Well, good for
So
him for
that's
assuming
not
so,
on.
but.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's,
in
I
fact-
think that's a little shady.
I think
Well,
what he
I
is
get
the
the
guy,
point, but
the
that's-
guy was afraid.
Well, let me give you another one that we did. In fact, this one I think was like one of our first on the grievance committee that we had. And the guy had shopped at a restaurant, or not a restaurant, a grocery store. At the grocery store, there was one agent that helped all of the people he worked at the grocery store, that's what it was. Worked at the grocery store. This agent helped everybody that worked at the grocery store. Well, and another agent picks up this buyer, goes out and is showing homes. So goes out, shows homes, at the end of showing homes the first time says, will you sign agency? The client says no. Agent schedules another appointment, goes out and shows property, asks a second time, will you sign agency? Client says no. And you see, I'm referring to it as a client, it's not even a client. Customer says no. Third time, goes out and shows properties. At the end of that one, sees them, they go out and look at a house, across the street is a model home. They go over to the model home, they register and look at the model home, asks the customer to sign agency, customer says no. 3 times they've said no, they won't sign agency. So the next day, this agent who helps everybody that works at this grocery store shows up to the model home, writes the offer, and the model home agent just happens to remember the name and the person, because they had just been in the day before, calls the agent and says, hey, FYI, your person that you brought in yesterday just wrote an offer with another agent. So the agent now calls the agent who wrote the offer and says, did you write an offer on this property for this person? And the agent, do you remember this, says, no.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
very.
So says, no, I didn't. So the agent calls back the model home agent and says, are you sure? Because this guy says he didn't write an offer for him. And no, I'm positive. It's got your client's name right here on it. I'm sure it's them. And so then calls back the agent again and says, the model home says you didn't. He says, oh, I got talking to my assistant, and my assistant writes up the offers for me. And yeah, we did write an offer on them.
Oh.
Now, if you were sitting there, what would you have done?
As which person?
If you were me or us.
Yeah, if you were us, who do you
Who
think
gets paid?
gets paid in that scenario?
That's all or nothing, there's no sharing.
Yeah, there's no sharing in this. It's all or nothing.
Yeah, the agent that runs off, because they finished the sale. They closed the
I don't know,
sale.
because
Doesn't the law state it's the agents that set in motion
A series of
the
events.
series of events that led to.
An uninterrupted chain of
No,
events.
the law does not say that. It
What?
does not say the ones who put in motion the events.
Who signed this one?
Yeah, that's correct. What he's saying, it is an uninterrupted chain of events that leads to a closing. Okay? So, for me, now at this time, we were only grievance committee, so we weren't listening, we didn't get to hear,
We didn't even work for the same company.
yeah, that's
We knew
true
each
at the same time. But, so, actually, you switched during that, I think.
Yep.
So we might have still been at the same company before, but anyway. That one went back and forth, we argued that one for a while, but at the end of the day, for me, what made the decision for me was that first agent asked 3 times and was told no 3 times. I mean, to me, I was kind of like,
They never said why.
yeah, why would you keep showing and not figuring out what the problem really was instead of,
So you're saying
You know,
there's a chance.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's where for me, so let's talk about, in terms of the code of ethics, what does our code of ethics say in that? So it's in section, does anyone happen to have their code of ethics stuff here with them? No, okay, section 16, I think it's either 1613 or 16, I can't remember. I might even be wrong, it might not be 16 even, maybe Dave's gonna go get it. But anyway, here's what it says.
Are you talking about the national code?
Yeah, I'm talking about our code of ethics. In terms of when you have to ask, because see, they teach you at the board, you should ask right off the bat. And the reason they teach you that is because they want to avoid all these conflicts between agents, okay? But what the code of ethics really says is you have to ask prior to providing a substantive service. And then in parentheses, after it says substantive service, it has in parentheses and it has i.e. writing an offer or presenting a CMA. So when do you have to ask, are you working with an agent?
When you're writing an offer, presenting a
So
CMA.
prior to writing an offer or presenting a CMA is when you need to ask that question. So for me, I'm gonna train you, don't ask that question until you're about to write an offer or present a CMA. Then is when you should ask. The other thing is, so for me, stop and think about it for a minute. What would be the very best way to really find out if they're working with an agent?
Well, I have 2 questions here. Number 1, shouldn't the question be, have you signed an agency agreement with any agent?
Good. Yeah, yes.
Because that's more, do you happen to have that copy with you so I can see it? Because I mean, yeah, we live in a crazy, sometimes, situations like that, we don't wanna be involved with. And then when you mention that we shouldn't ask that question until all the way when we're ready to write an offer, that kind of,
No.
that's kind of like shooting ourselves in the foot.
Well, okay, good, thank you. But stop for a minute. So he's saying, so what Mauricio's saying, which I know there's more people thinking this than you. Because how many of you are thinking, well, I don't wanna go waste time out doing that with somebody that is already working with an agent, right?
Exactly.
So, great thinking, except for, here's the problem. Are you shooting yourself in the foot the same or worse, though, if you ask the question right off the bat, like, so Kevin, are you working with an agent? And he says yes, and he's really not. And had you pursued it, you would have done a deal with him. But because you didn't ask, or excuse me, because you did ask, you just, and then walked away from it, the problem is, here's the difference. So where you're going with it is, I don't know that I shot myself in the foot on that one, because I don't know that I just missed out on a deal that I walked totally away from, versus the other way, what you're saying is, I just spent some time with this person and then I found out they weren't. But stop and,
It's a crapshoot either way.
well, but here, stop and really think about it. If you had signed agency with somebody else, and I said to you, so when I say what's the best way to find out if they're working with somebody? For me, it's to say, Chris, when would be a good time we could sit down together and I could hear more about what it is you want to accomplish? I mean, if he's signed agency, what's he gonna say to me?
I already have an agent.
Oh, really? Who is it?
Russell Archer.
Oh, well, yeah, he's awesome. He'll take you.
Everybody likes him and he's super good.
That's
at it.
right. So, but can you see that? If they have really signed agency with somebody, why would they schedule an appointment with me? So let's even go further down the road of what Mauricio just brought up. Let's say that, because here's what I'm saying is when you should really ask them is really when you have them sign agency. We just train you to do it early on instead of when you're writing an offer.
So, but like in the situation where this guy took this person out 3 times, I mean, at some point it seems like you would say, why won't you sign this?
Well, you would think.
But I don't know, it feels contradictory.
Well, there's.
What do you mean?
Well, because if it's like, I don't know, it just feels contradictory.
We don't show
I was up till
houses.
1:30 watching a class last night. But like.
And she
in
didn't
this-
fall asleep.
But in this situation, but like
Two
in
of us
this.
get up early.
That's him, Brett.
So in this situation, I'm gonna fight him after class. By the lockers. But like in this situation over here where it's like, oh, I've never signed agency before, you know what I mean? Like it's like people don't even understand what these words mean. There's so much difference.
Okay, I would agree they don't understand this.
Does implied agency only go one way, meaning that implied agency is if you're going and showing them houses, I would assume that if they didn't have an agent, they're inferring that you are their agent because you're showing them houses. When you're out showing houses, does it not go the other way around too, that because you're showing houses, you're inferring that you have an agency relationship if you're continually showing houses? Is that only a
Like
one-way
say
street?
that.
Well, okay, great question.
Is that a one-way street?
Great question. In my 20 years, and I'm not saying this hasn't happened, but I'm not aware of, and I've trained a lot of agents in the last 12 years, but I'm not aware of ever an implied agency anything.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
They beat
So
you in
yes,
school, the string of
they
school,
they beat,
you on
yes,
the front.
and as far as the division and stuff, now, it's possible the
They beat.
division might have some type of a standing of saying, well, it was implied or whatever, but I seriously, I've never seen it, ever.
Yeah, Russ,
So-
with your training on when you go talk to an agent about all the hey, what are you looking for, all that stuff. I usually go through all of that stuff, and then when I get done with it, I switch to like the agency agreement before I show them any houses. So this comes up before I'm showing houses.
Yeah,
And
good.
then I when I'm talking about agency, I'm like, hey, this is to protect you and help us work together in finding you a house. And don't talk to any other agents because I'm going to be representing you. I'm going to be negotiating for you, and that ruins our negotiation.
Yeah, now, I wanna say one thing though, yes, agree with what he said. And I will use showing homes as a way to get agency though. And what I mean by that is cause this is like a fine line that I'm teaching you guys on, because here's the challenge is, yes, we want you to get agency signed early and all of that. The hard part is I've seen agents like let's say Rob calls me about going and seeing a home, and I'm saying, okay, but when we get out there, I'm gonna have a document that you need to sign that says that I'm your real estate agent. And I mean, how many of you just like, not even knowing me, you're just called and said, hey, I'd like to go take a look at this home. Great, but you're gonna need to sign an agency agreement with me. Yeah, most people would not do that, right? So because of that, you gotta be willing to say, I'm gonna be willing to give up a little bit of time in order to build the relationship so that I can then ask for agency. And I got hands flying everywhere.
Is this your class today?
Sorta. It is, I was gonna get into it later, we're just doing it sooner.
I guess going back to, just a real recap, talking about closure rates and how many leads you talk to, and that example, I mean, I had an appointment earlier this week, and qualifying, going, great, when can you come into the office? And he actually came in the office, and as I said, put together a buyer pack, and it's just, my approach is going, hey, I'm going to educate you in the process, tell me what you know. And that's when I found I was not working with anybody, I don't know, I'm just gonna buy a house, oh, I need 3% down. Oh, you mean I still have to pay for the appraisal, out of pocket, or inspection? And at that point, that's when I was like, well, here's the, defining contract that shows, legally, I'm going to show you a house, I'm going to work for you, no obligation to you. Seller's paying, my fees. Sign here, press sign.
Okay, good, yeah.
And I think they have to, I like, I have not been in that position yet, but I have a buyer that wanted to see the condo across the street from the condo that we were selling, and the realtor was showing her through it, and then she called us and she was talking to me on the phone about the condo that we were selling, and she says, I really like you, the other realtor wanted to see me again, and I will see her again, but I like you better. And so she went to see her, and now she's saying, no, I want to work with you. So give me a call back on Thursday. So
Do it.
Yeah. And so it's kind of interesting. They have to get to know you because they need to be in a position of relationship of trust.
Yeah, this is no different than anything else that it's this. It doesn't matter if it's a buyer or seller. It's all the same.
Uh-huh.
We've got to first connect and build value, then we can close. Okay? That's the process. Doesn't matter who it is. So if we don't do that, if you try to close before you've connected and built value, they're not going to sign.
Yeah.
So I'm in total agreement with what Gabriel's saying. It's just we also have to be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to give up a little bit of time. Now, how much that is going to be totally different for all of you. Meaning, like earlier on for you guys, probably you're going to give up a little more time than once you've got 6 or 7 deals under contract. Now is when you start to maybe go, you know what, I'm going to start asking the question, and I'm not going to go out there if they are, and that's fine if you're in that position. So, Dan, then what?
Yeah, go ahead. Gentlemen first.
Hey, well,
His hand was up first, actually.
one thing I was thinking is, you can ask them, I mean, how long have you been looking at homes? Have you seen other ones? A lot of that implied stuff is, you can deduct.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm good with that. Of how many have you seen other homes, or how many? And because if they've seen homes, there's a pretty good chance that they have done that. Timber, and James too. James had his hand up a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, no, I think like what Gabriel's saying is really good, and I don't know your name. Like half my name. Anyway, I think like building value, like educating people is really important. So like what this contract is about, and like Jeremy had a sales meeting once where he was like, a lot of buyers will be like, no, this contract only protects you, it doesn't protect me. But like in the fiduciary duty, it discusses like all the ways that the contract actually protects the buyer. And so using that to build value to say, oh no, look, I have like 7 things that I'm required to do for you once we sign this. It's not just what you have to do for me. And like and educating people on like what it says, why it's valuable to them, that you're gonna work exclusively, you're gonna work hard for them, and that their agreement is that they'll work exclusively with you instead of like,
Perfect.
calling everybody in town.
Perfect. Yes. Good.
So you'll go out, they haven't signed a buyer agreement with you, you've shown one house to them, and you've built up good value with them. What is your approach that you would say to them
Great
in order
question.
to continue showing them?
Okay, good.
And
So,
say, hey,
yeah.
here's where we're at.
So let's use that example. So they've called me, they wanna go see a house. Even if they wanted to see 2 or 3, I'm good with that. I would say, great, let's go take a look at those 2 or 3 houses. So while we're out there, my whole objective is to connect, try to build some value, but ultimately what I wanna do is connect with them while we're out there. Hopefully they wanna buy one of those. If they do, great, I win. If they don't, then I would just say, have you had a chance to sit down and talk to anybody about what is going on in the market? And I've never had anybody say yes. I've had a few agents I've trained come back and say, people have said yes, and maybe that's because somebody else actually did it, but my experience is, they almost always say, no, I
What's that
haven't.
question again?
Have you had a chance to sit down and talk to anybody about what's going on in the market today? And they say no, great, when would be a good time that we can sit down, I can hear what it is you're looking for, and then educate you on what's going on in the market. So when would be a good time? So for me, then what I wanna do is do that, and then, not next week, but the week after, I think is the needs analysis class. In that class, I would sit down and do that. Cause if you do that and you ask the questions and listen is where then you'll build the value, and it makes for a very easy close at that point to get them to sign. So for me, the proper time to ask them to sign agency is with a buyer, but even with a seller really, would be after you've done a needs analysis. If you think about in our seller presentation that we train, you should ask that after you've asked all the questions. And so both is the same way.
So, I'm just trying to follow the chronological
you're good.
order, so you've shown them a home, then you have that conversation with them. Then you go down and you do a needs analysis meeting with them, and that's when you talk about the buyer agreement and say, I really want, I understand your needs now, it sounds like you're really serious about doing it.
Yep, you want me to give you the script that I use?
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I say, is let me tell you how I work. So after I've heard everything that they've talked about, I'm just gonna say, let me tell you how I work. I have a really good clear picture of what you're looking for in a home, but in my experience, I'm gonna have to look at 10 houses to find one that will work for you. So what that means is if the next time we get together, we're gonna go out and look at 3 or 4 homes, it means I'm gonna have to preview 30 to 40 homes. I'm willing to do that, provided that during the time we're working together, you'll commit to working exclusively with me. And if you do
Say
that,
that last part one more time, sorry.
which
After the 30 homes.
Oh, okay, so that means I'm gonna have to go out and look at 30 to 40 homes,
Okay.
which I'm okay with. I'm okay with spending that time doing that, provided, that's the key word I always throw in, provided that during the time we're working together, you'll commit to working exclusively with me. And they say, if you have done what I'm talking here, we've connected, we've built value, they will never say no. They go, oh yeah, for sure, no problem. Great, I've got an agreement that states that here in writing, and then we go through it. That's right, they are. I have had that actually. If you do it right on that needs analysis, that's not uncommon for that to happen. So serious. So anyway, does that help, James?
Provided that you're willing to work exclusively with
Work exclusively with me. Yep. And here's the beautiful thing, it was all recorded, so you can go to the YouTube channel and watch it again if you need it.
In class, they talked about, and I understand not wanting to sign that agreement, doing a limited agreement, so we're gonna go see these addresses, and they sign for those addresses, and you explain, so that's kosher and.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was telling
So you're connecting, but they're not
whoever it was.
committing to you.
Yeah. Well, they are for those properties.
Yeah,
So,
those
yeah, if you list, here's the properties we're gonna go look at, and if you write an offer on those, then I'm gonna. Now, here's the challenge though. This is kind of where, and this was part of what I wanna talk about, Timber, so don't feel bad.
1 hour in.
I know. Is that, it's okay, cause believe me, if I get you guys to understand this, you'll get a lot more appointments, so I'm good with it. So, here's the thing though, is there are 2 pieces to this, which is why I brought up the professional standards committee and the grievance committee and things, is because just because you have signed agency does not mean us on the professional standards committee, you end up sitting in a hearing with us, that we're gonna give you the commission. Those are 2 different pieces. Just because you have signed agency does not mean you are getting the commission from the seller on that house. Does that make sense? Because this is where, so we've got 2 different pieces we're talking about here. There's procuring cause on one side, which is how we on the Professional Standards Committee decide who gets the money, is who was the procuring cause. Remember, procuring cause is an uninterrupted chain of events that leads to a successful closing. So just because you signed agency and you went out and showed that person the house, we have had scenarios like that where we still gave the commission to somebody else. Because just because you went and signed it, if they didn't write an offer and you didn't see it all the way through to closing, so the hard part on procuring cause is you have to take the whole entire, everything that happened into consideration, not just they signed agency. Agency is a piece of it, but it's not just that. Now, so with that being said though, the flip side of that is, if you have signed agency, that client does owe that person a commission. So just because the board gave the commission to somebody else does not relieve, thank you, the buyer from owing a commission to you that they signed agency with. Does that make sense? So there's two sides of this. Now, very uncommon, I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen, but pretty rare that somebody then goes after the buyer for the commission. So, but it could happen. I mean, so that is a legally, that's why I always start the buyer packet class with, this is a legally binding agreement. So they could be owed the commission, but that's not necessarily the same as who's gonna get paid the commission from the seller. Does that make sense? And so, to me, yes, I would say you can just make a list of, here's the properties we haven't looked at, you're agreeing that I'll get it. So I a lot of times look at our buyer agency as a way to keep honest people honest. It's kind of really what it is. So anyway, make sense? We good? Are you ever gonna ask, are you working with an agent?
No.
How do we make them cry? Hey Russ, how do we make them cry? That's what I wanna know.
I'll come back in 2 weeks and I'll teach you. Okay? Alright.
Alright, so what else can we do for prospecting?
Okay, this was a big piece of actually where I wanted to go. Alright, so here's what I want to do though. I do want to make the list. I was just going to do it later. So we're going to do, we have our active ways that we prospect and we've got passive over here. So just quickly, and I don't want as detailed as a list, but let's kind of get the main things up there. What are the main active prospecting things we do?
Door knocking,
Okay, good.
calling,
Cold call. Good. Keep going.
SOI.
SOI. What else?
Guzmo.
Good. Okay.
Expires, or sell, I thought, expires.
Expires, okay, good. Okay, that's probably good on the active side. What's passive?
Websites, mailings, open houses.
You guys never brought up mailings last time, by the way. That was one of the ones that I was thinking of.
Because you told us that it's only like 0.2%
I know,
possibility to make.
You actually said it.
But it still was a way to do
You
it.
actually said it like 3 times.
I did?
So I thought you were just gonna put it up there, so I like.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
'cause
Alright,
you,
what
like,
else?
kept trying to get people to say.
Timber new.
Open
Yeah.
house.
Oh, yeah.
No, you kept like baiting, you like kept baiting it, but then you never wrote it down, so I was like, maybe it doesn't really mean that.
No, okay, so,
Open houses.
okay, good. What else?
Would an open house be a
Really
passive?
smart.
What?
Open house is passive?
We're gonna talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
What else? What else?
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna say advertising up here.
Networking.
Sign calls and networking. Okay, good.
What are sign calls?
Somebody
Oh, we
calling
call
you.
signs.
Yeah, somebody calling off of your sign, so here's what I wanna do, is I wanna go through and talk about some specifics on some of
Oh,
these.
referrals,
Um, Oh, yeah. Which,
Kind of SOI.
and
yeah,
farming.
yeah, we're not gonna do the whole
No.
list. Yeah, that's good enough, we're good. Alright, so here's what, I wanna go through and talk about some specifics on some of these and really get into like, so how do we kind of do it and be effective at it? Now, in fact, so Andy, when he said, is open house really passive? Here's the thing, how many of you have heard open houses are a waste of time?
Yeah,
I've heard
all the
it,
time.
but
My husband
it
says that.
depends.
Okay, how many of you believe it?
I don't.
No, I don't believe it.
I mean, I like to do it, but I haven't.
So, who's doesn't believe it but doesn't dare to raise their hand?
Well, it depends.
If you're cold
Mine
calling,
was a
now
waste
you're-
of, I'm gonna tell you, mine was a waste of time because I just asked every person, are you already working with somebody? Are you? So then it's a total waste of time because you don't take names, you don't follow up. because everybody you assume. But that's dumb, because why would they be at an open house if they are working with somebody exclusively? Then that person would have called you and asked for show-ins. That's so dumb.
Thank you, good. So now here's the thing, let me get into this. The reason I put it over here is passive, and the reason why you hear open houses are a waste of time, and let me tell you, for years and years and years, I believed that as well. And I will actually tell you, the way that 90, maybe even 95% of the agents do an open house, it is a waste of time. But let's talk about it for a minute, because even with John and George, and I've had discussions with both of them about this, because when I first got here, I was like, wait a minute, like, open houses can be a really good thing, and they both had said, I agree if you do it right. And that's the key. See, here's the key. The way that most open houses are done, they are a waste of time. The other reason you're gonna hear that open houses are a waste of time is because for the listing agent, once you are a listing agent, and meaning like that's where your focus is and where your business is coming from, they are a waste of time. If you are the seller, they're a waste of time. Why? Why would an open house be a waste of time for a seller?
Because that gathers buyers, not sellers.
Yeah, well, yes, and really, for the seller themselves, anybody showing up to the open house, it's pretty rare that they actually buy that house.
I have to disagree with it because my 2 homes that I sold in Australia, I hated people calling and looking at my house right at the last minute.
Yeah.
It just annoyed me.
Yeah.
And so I told my agent, which is my neighbor behind me, and that I don't want to just have people just calling me. If they're really interested, they can go to the open house on Saturday mornings. And for a month I would have open houses every Saturday morning, and I did that on both of my homes. And that's where I got buyers. I got multiple offers that way.
But did the buyers have agents? Other agents, or
It's
did your
worse.
agent, or did your agent write the offer?
My agent wrote the offer.
Okay.
It's different in Australia. You don't just sign agency agreement, you just go to open houses. A lot of homes are sold in open houses, a lot of homes are sold on the block. I mean, just because that's
Okay.
what people do is
Okay.
auctions too,
Okay.
but we never do.
So you can disagree if we're in
Yeah, I disagree.
Australia, but we're not.
Yeah, it's just culturally it's different.
So yes, no, but
It's the area.
But here,
yeah.
I'll just tell you, in my 20 years of doing this, I have very rarely seen the person, it does happen, I don't wanna take away from that, it does happen.
It did, yeah.
But it's not the norm. You're typically not gonna get the buyer for the house. Seller, really, I like to refer to open houses as a seller binky. It's a great way to keep the seller from crying, okay? So it's a good seller binky. But as far as for the seller though, for the most part, and granted there are gonna be some exceptions to this, but for the most part it is a waste of time for the seller. But I will tell you, if you wanna pick up some buyers, it is a really, really good way to pick up some buyers. Because as Tim said, they're hand raisers. These are the people who are demonstrating to you they're gonna do something. Remember we talked about at an open or a for sale by owner is the nice thing about a for sale by owner is they're raising their hand saying I want to sell my house. The same type of a thing with web leads, same thing. Sign calls, same thing. Open houses, same thing.
You got sellers too.
Yes, you can for sure. You can, no question. But but with all these things, you're typically more likely to pick up buyers. Now, what I'm going to tell you about how to do an open house, if you do it that way, you will pick up sellers as well. So.
What about a situation like with, say, a Linda Seacrest, where she's handling multi-million-dollar homes? I know that she puts a lot of effort into her open houses, and she has parties for the neighborhood, bringing them in for word of mouth. Are you saying the same thing? Do you think that she's not picking up her actual buyer from?
No. What I'm saying is how what you're actually proving my point is if you do it right, it can be an effective tool. If you don't do it right, it's a waste of time, and I'll 100% agree. The problem is most people were never really taught how to actually do it and the right way to do it to where it can be an effective use of time. And I'll show you what I mean here. Well, in fact, remember my bike that I drew, Timber?
Yes, please draw it.
I'm about to.
Yes.
I'm still
This is
recovering
like the
from the
best-
sailboat.
Yeah, my drone, right? The what?
I'm still recovering from your sailboat.
I think my sailboat's actually
I
pretty
wasn't
good.
here to mock that one, I was watching online.
You'll have to, okay. Well, I think the sale vote was pretty good. But, all right, anyway, okay, remember we talked about hub and spokes?
If you were here, how could you forget?
So, I know, I remember that I talked about it, thanks to Tim. But here's, for me, if you use it from that, like we talked about, as a hub, so we use it as a hub, it can be a very good thing. So what you can do, and I'm gonna show you, I'm just gonna give you some ideas, and it doesn't have to be an open house, but these are some of the things as I draw, I'm gonna start saying, I draw a picture of my drone.
Those are spokes.
I just imagine this thing rolling down the road and I just, you know.
It's not meant to
It's like
really
one of those
be that.
skinny tan things that like crawls down the wall.
What?
It's supposed to be a wheel.
It's not really supposed to be a wheel, but I made the comment of,
Like,
think,
you
I said,
bicycle.
think about in terms of a bicycle that has a hub and spokes, okay? Think of that concept here, okay?
I get it.
So the concept of that. Now, if you use it as a hub, it can be a really, really good thing. So just very similar to, in our script book here, we've got a just listed script, right? That we can go out and say, hey, we've just listed a home for sale. And why would we do that? Why would we use a just listed script? Why would we start, let me say that differently. Let me ask the question differently. Why would we start this by saying, I, or my company, just listed a home for sale over on Primrose Lane. It has 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and it's listed for $299.90. Why do we do that?
Because
You might have seen it or something.
it automatically talks a little piece about the market right now, of what's happening.
Okay, good.
Tasting it for people.
Okay, good. Andy?
If they're in the area, in the neighborhood, that price may give them some idea of what maybe their house is worth more than what they thought it was, it kind of gives them some
Okay.
selling.
I don't think that's, good thoughts, but I don't think that's why we do it. Why do we do it?
My company's working in that.
Just when are you selling your house?
Thank you. So why do we do it? Now that you know that,
Creating interest.
yeah, it's just an excuse to be knocking on the door, right? That's all, I mean, let's tell the truth. That's really all it is an excuse to be knocking on the door, right?
Yeah, when I knocked doors yesterday, and I've got buyers I'm working with, and not specifically in this neighborhood, but all I was using is, I've got some buyers that are looking for a home, just as an excuse to start a conversation, and then you start asking them about their house, you start asking about.
It's just an excuse.
Just need an
Yeah,
excuse.
it's just an excuse to be knocking on the door. I mean, if we really tell the truth, right? I mean, is that true or not true? You don't think that's true, Tim?
What with, well, the reason why.
Yeah, it's, us saying.
Because I actually have buyers. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I stopped by for sale by owner that just popped up by my kid's school. I was like, hey, I've got a few buyers looking in the area.
Yeah, no, but no, I'm talking specifically the just listed script. The reason we start with, we've just listed a home for sale and telling them all that, it's really just an icebreaker because as Andy said, you're typically not gonna knock, Alan opens the door, hi, when do you plan on moving?
Tomorrow.
I mean, it just, that'd be great if that happened, but it doesn't, right? I mean, it's the excuse. So think of this as the same thing.
It's
Go
kind
ahead.
of planting a seed, isn't it, in their mind?
No, it's just an excuse.
Right.
No, I mean, I'm teasing you guys. Partially, yes, we are hoping that maybe they go, oh, wow, really, that's sold for that much? I mean, somebody who's thinking about it, that's probably what will happen. But ultimately, when we're saying that, when Mike Ferry came up with that, it was really just, what would be a good excuse to be knocking on somebody's door? I mean, really, that's kind of the truth
I'm
about it.
gonna say Primrose Lane. Where's Primrose?
Where's Primrose Lane? Yeah.
Well, and because you think like, what's your goal, if it's not an excuse, what's your hope, like, what are you hoping happens when you say that, like, oh, I know somebody who would wanna buy that then? Most people are pretty aware of homes that are gonna be for sale and things like that, so it's not like you're bringing them this earth-shattering news.
Yeah, it's not like they didn't know.
Yeah, I think it is.
Go ahead.
So is this you saying you're bringing this concept to why you even have an open house?
Thank you, yep, exactly. So what I'm saying is if you will think about this.
Thanks for bringing this in.
Yeah, ultimately what I'm saying is doing an open house is another great excuse to be out knocking on somebody's door. Here's why when I said if you do it right, it can be a great listing tool as well. Here's why. In fact, let's do it this way. Let's first talk for sale by owner, okay? So I'm gonna throw in our spoke up here. For sale by owners. How could we use an open house as an excuse to go talk to a for sale by owner?
Well, it's
Pricing.
like neighborhood awareness, so it's like, I don't know. I'm gonna bring more buyers to my house than yours.
Okay, well, well, no, we're gonna do that actually in a second, I'll show
I'm
you.
gonna give them a map
I'll show you in a
that's
second.
around here.
I was talking to a FISBO and he said, oh, I know that 2 homes that are real estate agent that has realtors, they're gonna be having open house this Saturday. So I decided this is gonna be sticking my sign up.
Perfect.
Because he said, because when I just stick out my sign for open house, I hardly get anybody in. So that could, you
Okay,
know,
perfect, yeah. So here's what I would do. Yes, stop and think for a minute. How are most people contacting for sale by owners? I mean, you're doing for sale by owners. Tell me about what you're doing. What do you do?
well, I use for sale by owner script and I try closing every 2 or 3 sentences.
Okay.
And I just had a FISBO, I just had a listing a couple weeks ago, we're selling it right now, we sold it practically. And I have another appointment with another for sale by owner tomorrow. But you know, when you're talking about analytical, he needed to see the numbers that we can make it, you know,
Sure.
to make it. So I don't know, that's what we're gonna go see
Okay,
it
so
tomorrow.
how are most for sale by owners being contacted? Similar to that, right?
Yeah,
Is people calling them trying to get a listing, right?
usually realtors.
So now, yeah, realtors calling them, not other people. So now I come up and I knock on Pete's door. He's a for sale by owner. And I've got an invitation, so I'm gonna create an invitation to an open house, okay? So I come and I knock on Pete's door and I say, hey Pete, do you know the Jones over here on Primrose Lane? Yeah. You do? Okay, great, yeah. Well, so we've got their home listed. We're actually gonna be doing an open house for them on this Saturday, from 11 to 2 or whatever, and wanted to give you an invitation. Now, be a for sale by owner, what would they say?
No,
Great, glad they get up. I just put my own house up. I don't know.
I don't know, I would be, well, I guess I'm thinking now, like, well, if I'm a for sale by owner, I'm not going around the neighborhood with my own flyer, like knocking on people's
Thank you.
doors, so like this is already adding value to like why you might
See,
consider using this agent. I mean, if he's already working the neighborhood, he's not like, oh, I'd be happy to tell people that your house is for sale if you wanna work with me, you know, I mean, like he starts to see
Yeah,
keeping me.
think about the message that you're sending to them. So I knock on his door and I say, we've got the home over here, we're gonna be doing an open house, wanted to give you information. Who do you know that would wanna move into the area? Well, I mean, be a for sale by owner, what would you
He doesn't know
say?
anybody else, otherwise he could sell his home.
So what would you say? So, okay, never mind, you're not a good for sale by owner.
Oh, you
I'm
want me
just
to
teasing.
talk?
I'm teasing.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was trying to get you to.
Okay, so it would be, no, if I knew a seller, I want them to come see my house.
Thank you. Well, isn't that what they would probably say? If I knew somebody buying, I would have them buy my house, right?
Right.
Hey, great point. And in fact, actually, one of the things you may want to do, so this is somebody brought up already, I think Natalie or somebody, in terms of, you know what? We're going to be doing this open house. You probably ought to plan to do one then as well. So, in fact, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm going to go out and talk to 100 of the neighbors about the open house that we're going to be having. So, I guess what I'd be curious to know is if we have an overflow of buyers and maybe they're not interested in that home and they wanted to see yours, would you be willing to pay me a 3% commission if I brought you a buyer?
Yeah.
You would? Oh, awesome. Well, I'm out knocking on doors right now for the Jones. And so once I'm done with that, I would love to come back and preview your home and talk to you a little bit more about what I'm going to be doing and those type of things. So when would be good for you? Now, what's the message I just sent to him?
You're
I'm
gonna
looking
help.
for a home for a buyer.
Yeah, you
Well, yes, and because remember what I said. Well, let me go finish door knocking for the Jones.
Priority.
What am I telling them? Priority, but also I'm working really hard for my clients.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go out and work really hard for my clients, and I'm sending a very subtle message to him of this is how hard I would work for you, which is what Timber brought up. So I say, great, I'm going to go do that. So I'll come back at 4:30. Great. So I go out and knock on the rest of the doors, and I'm inviting all the neighbors to come and see the property and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Now, the other thing that I think is a good idea, probably you're never going to do it. I'm throwing down the gauntlet to you. Okay. You're probably not going to do this, but I think it's a really good idea, not with him, but every other neighbor. So if I get to Dallon's and I knock on his door and I say, Dallon, do you know the Jones over here on Primrose Lane?
No.
You don't really know?
Is that
Okay.
the house for sale?
Yeah, we've got their home listed,
Okay,
and
yeah.
we're going to be doing an open house. Actually, we're going to be doing a marketing event for them.
Wow.
And so wanted to give you an invitation. Would love to have you stop by and see if you can think of anybody else that may want to move into the area. That'd be good?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
We'll maybe stop by.
Cool. The other thing I'm gonna be doing is putting out a whole bunch of signs, and I may wanna put one in your yard. Would that be okay if I did?
Sure, yeah, I mean, just for the day.
Yeah, I put it up in the morning, take it down in the afternoon.
Great,
So,
yeah, that's okay.
okay, great. Would you mind just signing this that says you've given me permission to put a sign in your yard?
Yeah.
Then I hand him a listing agreement. No,
Okay.
just kidding. I'm joking. Totally joking.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna hand him just something that says, I give Russ Orchard permission to put a sign in my yard, from this date to this time, Okay? The reason why we wanna do that, cause you will have sometimes a city will try to tell you you can't put out signs, but the truth is that I have even a copy of a Supreme Court ruling that says people can put a sign on their own private property. So, I just want permission, will you give me permission? And I'm gonna have him initial it, it's just, you will lose less signs if you actually have people give you permission to. So, he signs it, okay, great, boom. Awesome, okay, so we may or may not end up doing it, but if we do, I just wanted to make sure I had permission to put a sign in your yard, okay? Awesome. I'd go to the next one, do the exact same thing. I would ask for permission on every one of them. Here's why. On the day of the open house, I wanna go put out at least 20 signs. How many signs do agents typically put out for an open house?
3.
3, 4, 2, yeah, not very many, right? I wanna put out 20, why? And I wanna put them all over the neighborhood.
You want people to come to yours and
Actually, I could care less about even that, really. What?
Cause it's creating value of what you're doing for this home, so everyone in the neighborhood is watching you.
Everybody in the neighborhood's gonna know that I actually did the open house, even if nobody ever shows up. Look, think about, I'm like putting my signs, so if I were you, I would go get at least, in fact, one agent I trained this in went and bought 200 signs. He's actually here now and he's got 200. So I always tell people, call him and see if he'll borrow you a sign, but they've got his name and phone number on it. So if I were you, I'd get at least 20 that had your name and phone number on it, and then you go out and just plaster the neighborhood with your signs. I mean, it's like you're running for office for the day in their neighborhood. You throw up all these signs. So I throw up all these signs in the neighborhood, and then I go do the open house. Now, sorry, somebody had a question. Dan.
I was just gonna say that Tonya, she relisted our home a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't end up selling, but she put signs like that everywhere, balloons, everything. It was
Wonder where she
kind
put
of
that.
exposure.
This is a lady making $300,000 a year, I mean, she knows what she's doing. So, that's what I would do, okay? So I'd go out and do all these invitations. I mean, create a buzz in the neighborhood about this is a marketing event that you're gonna be doing for them. Go ahead.
When you go door knock in the area, do you leave like a flyer on doors that say open house?
Yes.
Or do you only give them to people that you talk to?
Well, actually, great question. Depends on the area and the neighborhood. Here's the other thing that I think is cool with this is a great way to really send the message of that you're working. So for me, if it's a neighborhood that I really want listings in, I'm gonna really try to target specifically the people in that area. So I'm gonna probably not leave one. If I had tried maybe twice or even maybe a third time, maybe I would. But if I don't really care as much, then yes, I would leave one. Does that make sense? So either way is fine. Totally fine either way. So, but I'm gonna go out though and I'm gonna do this, and then on the day of, I wanna put out all these signs, because if he's the for sale by owner in the neighborhood, and he sees all these signs put out, what's the message he's getting?
Yeah.
What else do you think he's gonna do?
Call you.
Well, he's gonna put out an open house sign for that day too, right? But notice I said sign.
Yeah.
He's probably gonna have one in front of his house, hoping that as people drive by to go see mine, that they'll stop at his. Now, here's what happens. No matter what, here's the thing. Ultimately, here's where I'm going with this. You can do this and be successful at it, even if not one person shows up at the open house. Because you're doing a ton of advertising in the neighborhood. The other thing that you want to do that makes this not be a waste of time, see, most agents, what do? How many of you have been to an open house prior to being an agent? So what was tell me about the experience. What did the agent do?
Sit there, hand you the flyer
And they said,
and.
take a look around. If you have any questions, let me know. Sometimes they don't even quit watching the football game that's on or anything, right? So if you do that, that's a waste of time. Okay, now, I set this up in terms of don't ask, remember, if the people who show up, don't ask them, are you working with an agent? Most agents, the first question they ask when you walk in the door, are you working with an agent? And then they go, yeah, alright, well, take a look around, if you have any questions, let me know. I mean, you're letting business walk out, somebody had a hand up. No?
One of the ones that we did is we had them sign the paper,
Yeah,
have their
something.
email address.
So good, yes, thank you,
contact
perfect.
information, and
In
they-
fact, here's what you wanna do. See, people who stop at open houses, I like to call them hit and run artists. Their objective is to get in and get out as fast as they can without talking to you. I mean, those that have been to an open house, is that not what you were doing? It's like, I don't wanna get bugged by the person who's the agent, right? So here's what we wanna do. I'm gonna show you some more artistic ability here.
I would love it.
So here's the house.
It's beautiful.
Here's the front door. I think it's a good idea to have a table that you set up next to the front door like that, so that when I open the door, here, like so, I can be standing right here.
So you're locking up.
You block the door. So, because their objective is to get in and get out as fast as you can. I want to open the door, and I've got a table set up here so that I am now in control of, like, the doors here, the table's here, and I'm saying, thanks for coming in. And then also, I think it's a good idea to have like a little placard or something that says, that's signed by the seller, that says, please sign in before viewing our home, something like that, and have it signed by the seller.
For security.
That's right, for security purposes, for something like that. I don't care how you word it, but something like that.
So if you go through the parade of homes, and I'm sure everyone has, 75% of them, that's exactly what they do. They've got the desk right at the front door, and they've got somebody right at the front door, and they have you sign, especially in the better homes.
If you just make everybody wear booties, then you are like required to,
To
and
slow
here's your
down.
booties,
That's not a bad
here's your
idea.
booties.
Could slow them down. So, yeah, like the parade of homes. So, but when you let them in, you tell them, look, the seller has asked that everybody that comes into their home sign in. And then don't let them in if they don't sign in. If they won't sign in, they don't come in.
Phone number, address.
Phone number,
email,
address, email,
Social security.
driver's license number. Yeah, no,
Credit,
you don't need all that.
credit.
But make them sign in. And just say, our seller has asked that everybody, so have the seller sign up the thing that says that. Then from there, you say, okay, the seller's asked because they want to know everybody who comes through their house. I mean, don't you think the seller has a right to know that? Absolutely.
Well, I mentioned this before, 2 years before I moved back to the United States, I was going through all these open houses just to see what my houses compared to theirs, and as well as how much I could sell my home. And they had me sign the sheet, and then they would, they actually
Take
called
them
me.
through.
But I actually changed the phone numbers after a while.
Yeah, good. Which is fine with me. That, in fact, I wanted to talk about it. Most of the time, they're going to give you a bad phone number. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Why?
They're not wasting your time calling them.
Well, because what I plan to do is connect. So, yeah, I'm fine with that. You write down a fake phone number, that's fine. And if they say, well, I don't want you to call me, great, write do not call next to it and I won't call you. I don't care. I just want, because here's why. This is like a dual purpose thing. The awesome thing about this, part of what we're doing is we're going to separate the people we want to work with from the ones we don't want to work with. If somebody shows up, fine if she wants to write down a fake number. But if she shows up and says, I don't want to sign in and I want to see the house, I'm sorry, the seller has asked that everyone sign in before viewing their home, so I need you to sign it.
So it's just it's a sifter.
Yeah, if they get mad at me and run away, I can, instead of feeling bad, I go, glad I didn't have to work with that guy. He was a jerk. I mean, I don't care if they write down, well, I might care a little if they wrote down Mickey Mouse, but to me, I almost don't care what I just want to say I need to sign in, they're going to sign in, and then what Natalie said, and then I'll come to your question, is then I'm going to say, all right, let me take you through the home. Now, as I take them through the home, what I'm not going to do, though, is like walk in and be like, this is the living room. This goes for when you're showing properties to a buyer too. Don't go in and be like, this is the kitchen, this is the bedroom, this is the, I mean, they've lived long enough to know what a family room looks like, okay? You don't need to tell them what it looks like.
If they insist that they do not want to put the number down and they insist on seeing the home, then they say, no, we're not leaving until.
Great, I'll be glad to schedule an appointment with you for another time, but for today, the seller has said that she only wants people, or he only wants people to come in the home who signs in. So I'll schedule another time if you'd like to come back. See, what else am I doing by doing that?
You're protecting
You're
your client.
protecting the
I'm,
You're doing
believe it
whatever
or
you-
not, it doesn't happen very often, but believe it or not, there are some people who use open house as a way to go rob the house.
Yeah.
But so this is how I'm protecting that from happening. If he was there just to try to go through their drugs and in their bathroom or whatever to steal drugs, and I say, I'll be glad to schedule a time later with you to come back, what's he gonna do?
Never come back.
He'll probably say, okay, yeah, I'll give me your card, I'll call you. Perfect, here's my card, see you later, I don't care.
You just have a photo booth and like a drop for driver's license.
That we were joking about that a little bit on an upper end home when what Kevin was talking about. That's not a bad idea. You may want to do something like that.
I think another good idea is if they're signed in, look at their names, and when you're showing the home, repeat their
For
name.
sure, yes,
because
absolutely.
people love to hear
Yes.
their name, and that's another way of connecting and adding
Yes.
value.
Good. So let me give you another secret actually
Or they
to
don't
connecting and
respond.
to adding value. So
Who the hell are you talking to?
here's
Oh, my name is so.
that's true.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
Okay, so
Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse.
let me bring you back on track, Timber. Okay, so they sign in, I'm now taking them through the house. I started by saying, don't point out like this is the living room and don't point out, oh, this is a really cool surround sound, whatever, who cares? Remember we started this by they're not gonna probably buy the house anyway, so who cares? What are you trying to do?
Connection.
Get an appointment, that's right, we're gonna connect, so how am I gonna connect with them? What's the best way to connect? Questions about what?
Them.
Great.
About them, right? So-
How many children you got?
Yeah, find out about them. Do you live in the area? How many kids do you have? Where do you work at? I mean, so as you're going through the house with them, don't point out stuff about the house. Talk to them about them. Get to know them. This is why I don't care what phone number they write down, what name they write down or anything, because my plan as I'm going through the place with Pete is I'm gonna ask, and here's how you need to do this. What I'm teaching you guys, we're talking about it in terms of open house, but this works for getting appointments everywhere. Okay, so even though right now we're talking specifically that, for sure on an open house, you should put a piece of tape, 3 pieces of tape somewhere in the house on the floor. That is your cue that when I get to that piece of tape, so do it kind of as a game. So come up, Pete. So let's say that I had a piece of tape over here. Pete's come in right here, you're my door. So come over here. He's the door, here's my table. So he knocks on the door, I open the door. Hi, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Great, Russ Orchard with Century 21, you are?
Pete Larson.
Pete, hey Pete, the sellers just asked that everybody sign in before they take a look at their home, so I need you to sign in there. Awesome. Well, great, so, do you live in the area?
Yeah, just right down the road, actually.
So if I've got a piece of tape over here, now, I mean, we're totally shrinking this than I'm not gonna have it that close, right? But, oh, just down the street.
Yeah.
Really? You must be a busy man. You know, you shut off your phone for my class. Right.
On that note, you don't have an appointment.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna talk, oh, you live in the area. Okay, so what brings you in today?
You know, I was driving around, I saw this sign. I
So
was curious.
ultimately, if I can stop before I get to that tape, great. Oh, you were just curious? Oh, awesome. So have you thought about buying a new home or?
Yeah, the one we have is a little bit small.
Oh, really? A little bit small. Well, when would be a good time? Now, I'm way shortening this. When would be a good time we could get together and take a look at it?
I would love you to sell my home.
Yeah, that's how it happens. Give me an objection. If he does that, you guys know what to do if that happens, right? Okay. So give me an objection.
You know, I'm not serious.
You're not serious. Okay, great. So, are you married? Have kids? Hate kids? What?
A little bit.
So I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going through the house and talking to him, right? I have kids and hate kids. So I'm gonna keep going through the house. Before I get to the next piece of tape, I gotta ask for an appointment again for something. So as we're going through, I'm gonna use my script that I already did with James back there. So have you had a chance to sit down and talk to anybody about what's going on in the market?
No, not really.
Oh, awesome. You know, that's one of the things that I like to do for my clients. When would be a good time that we could sit down and do that? Don't say no.
I'm usually free on Saturday.
No, say no.
Oh, I thought you said don't say no.
No, say no.
Oh, no.
But why? Give me a reason. Give me an objection.
Like I said, we're not really serious.
Oh, you know what's awesome
We're
about
just
that?
curious right now.
Yeah, totally understand. I work with my clients at their pace. That's another great way to get appointments. I work with my clients at their pace, so that's totally cool. So I wouldn't be, now remember, we're walking through the house before I get to the next piece of tape. So I wouldn't be like trying to pressure you or anything. I just actually enjoy educating people on what's going on in the market and even getting home
How
value.
about
So,
you give me your card?
so actually, when would be a good time I could stop by and take a look at it and I could do one of those CMAs for you? You can say yes this time.
Yes.
So here's my experience. You're typically gonna have to ask 3 times, at least 3. I may have to even go as much as 5. But here's the thing, the reason I don't care what name or phone number they wrote down there, what was the purpose of having them do that?
You're stopping them at the door.
To slow them down. I'm trying to slow them down, because I'm not gonna, if he's running through, I'm not gonna get an appointment. So I'm trying to slow him down. Now that he's said yes, I can come take a look at his house, great, let me get what your address was, Pete.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, and what's your phone number?
1, 2,
So
3.
you can call and confirm. And do you have an email address?
1, 2, 3.
Awesome. Cool, great. Well, I'll see you on Saturday at whatever time and blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense? So I don't care what he wrote down, because what he wrote down is not what I'm gonna use. I'm gonna actually have him give it to me. Sometimes what they will do, sometimes what they will say is, oh, well, that number that I wrote down on there, that's actually my work number. So, or they'll say that, you know, if you build enough of a relationship with them, they'll go, that was actually a bogus phone number that I put down. That I just, you know, I didn't realize that, you know, you're a nice guy, so I didn't want you to bug me. So let me give you my real number.
With that, Russ, when you build enough rapport with them after they did that, you could probably do the same thing in the door when you have that jerk come up and be like, I'm not gonna write down a number or whatever. Then you could be like, well, why is that? And you could kind of go, well, you could go through the same thing with that. You're just
Sure,
handling
yeah, why not?
objections the same way.
Yeah, why not? But very rare that happens, but occasionally you'll get somebody, I'm not doing that. And I had, when I learned this, actually was in Hollywood Hills in California. I'd gone down to California to be trained in it. And we had a guy come and he freaked out. I'm coming back and I'm telling the seller you wouldn't let me look at their house. And I said, thank you. They'll be happy to know I did exactly what I was supposed to do. So please do. I mean, he still was screaming as he walked away. But I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Okay? So does that make sense? Now, remember where we started this. This is for sale by owner. So now the open house is done. We've done it, okay? Let's say we had 5 people come through, okay? Which, that's a whole nother discussion. But let's say we had 5 people come through. After the open house, whether it's same day or next day, I'm gonna come back over to Pete. Knock on the door. Hey, how you doing? Now, this is not, I probably shouldn't use Pete, but this is Pete, the for sale by owner, not the guy that came over to the house, okay? So this is Pete, the for sale by owner. Remember, I stopped and talked to him and said, hey, you ought to think about doing an open house too. So now I'm gonna come back and just say, huh?
Came back and forth.
Well, or let's next day, whatever. So I show up and I say to Pete, hey, just wanted to check and see, I noticed you had your open house signs out while I was doing my open house. I just wanted to see how yours went.
Oh, it was all right.
Yeah, how many people did you have to go through?
2, 3.
Oh, 3? Oh, man, we had 5. I mean, whatever it is, I can guarantee you you're gonna have more. I mean, don't lie to him, but I will promise you, he was not gonna, there are people that are gonna drive, even though his got the open house sign out, because it's a for sale by owner, people are gonna drive right by it and not stop in. I promise, you'll have, I've yet to see one, I'm not saying it can't happen, but I've yet to see one that they had the same number even. It's always less. So, great, you had 3? Oh, wow, gosh, we ended up with 5, so did anybody interest in it?
Yeah, they said they were kind of interested.
You know, one of the challenges, Pete, no, I probably wouldn't do this, but you could say to him, how do you tell a mom her baby's ugly?
You don't?
Yeah, you don't, right? I mean, that's one of the challenges is that you, I mean, I'm telling this for you guys. The challenge with a for sale by owner is what are the people gonna say when they go through the house? With a for sale by owner. Are they gonna go, oh, your carpet, your house stinks, you ought to get rid of the dog smell and the pee cat urine, right? They're never gonna say that to a for sale by owner. They're gonna go, oh, it's really nice, thanks, we'll get back with you and let you know. So of course they're gonna go, oh yeah, I had a couple people that seemed like they were interested. Oh, that's awesome. You know what? One of the services that I will do for you if you're interested, Mr. For Sale by Owner, if you want, and then you could bring up the how do you tell a mom her baby's ugly, you don't, right? So if you want, I could call and find out, get some real feedback, because more than likely they're gonna just tell you they liked it if they really didn't. So I'd be happy to call those people back. What am I getting now?
He didn't take phone numbers.
Yeah, he probably didn't get phone numbers, but if he did, now I'm gonna get names and phone numbers. So I could, even if I wanted to, tell him, have everybody sign in, So I could tell them before the open house even, have everybody sign in and I'll follow up with them for you to find out what they thought, because they'll tell me the truth, they're not gonna tell you the truth. So I'll follow up with you if you want, why would I be okay with doing that?
Cause you get more names.
Yet I'm now getting names of people that are hand raisers that I could ask for if they weren't the same. They may be the same people I already had, which, whatever, that's fine. But what's the message I'm sending to Pete?
You're working hard.
Look at what, I'm showing him how hard I work for my clients. Does that make sense? So same thing with an expired. So if you'll do an open house right, it can be very effective. Thanks, Pete. On expireds, same thing. Find all the expireds in the last year in that neighborhood. Go knock on the door and let them know.
So if you did that and you called the people that he had on his list, at what point do you get him to sign with you or whatever?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So if he had some lists for me, I'd say great. Pete, you know what? I'll call all these people tomorrow, or I'll call them this afternoon. When would be a good time we could come back and I could sit down and go through that with you? I always schedule another appointment, and then I would go call them. I'd come back and I'd sit down and go, okay, Pete, they said that your house smells like cat urine. They hate all the 12 dogs in the backyard and whatever. Go back and give him whatever feedback. They actually, people said they really liked it. They just, nothing. They didn't have any complaints. They just wasn't the house for them. So, how long are you wanting to keep trying? So then I'm going to transition. How long are you going to want to keep trying for sale by owner before you would consider listing with an agent? But now, here's the difference. It's going to be a way different conversation because I've already been having conversations with him and showing him how I work and some of those things. So, how long were you thinking you want to try it on your own before?
I was thinking give it another couple weeks.
Another couple weeks? Okay, so in the event you did list, have you already made a decision on that?
No.
Oh, great.
I had a lot of agents call me, but.
All right, well, awesome. Well, I would love to sit down and spend some time talking to you about what we do to get homes sold. So I could do that now or another time, which is better for you.
In about a week and a half.
Give it about a week and a half, so let me get on my calendar. Okay, what day? I'm gonna schedule an appointment. Great, I'm gonna stay in touch with you between now and then, because what I don't wanna do is have Natalie call him in the meantime and then because at some point they're gonna get tired of being for sale by owner and they're gonna list. I just wanna be there when that happens. So I'm gonna find some excuses to call him every few days about something, either about the listing that I've got down the road or something. Does that make sense? For that week and a half, if we're scheduling it that far out. Or what else could I do? Great, well, let's sit down, go through what I do. I understand you're a week and a half out, but let's sit down and go through what I do. And if you're happy with what I do, we could actually get everything signed. I could start doing some marketing right now on your home, and we could just get everything signed and set, ready to go for a week and a half from now.
So what if I find a buyer in the next week and a half?
Okay, what we'll do is we'll just do an addendum in there that says that if you come across a buyer, you'll let me know, and prior to that, we'll cancel this agreement. Sound good?
Yeah.
Then I'll sign it. Great. Now I just signed a listing agreement for a week and a half from now. If he comes across a buyer, it's worth it. Oh well. Make sense? Okay. So expireds, same thing. Go find all the expireds in the last year. Go knock on their door and just tell them, hey, I'm going to be doing an open house, and as part of doing my open house, I do research on the neighborhood to get a good feel of what's going on in the neighborhood. One of the things I noticed, Rob, was your home was for sale about 6 months ago and it didn't sell. I can see you're a little disappointed. What happened? And I'm going to totally empathize with. Oh, really? You never heard from the agent again? Well, what did they do that you liked?
Nothing.
Nothing, really. I really hate hearing that. There's so many agents that don't do anything. What am I doing? I'm out working hard for my seller. He's seeing that. The market's really heated up. Are you guys still interested in thinking about selling your home?
We might get it sold quickly.
Oh, I love prospecting. This is so easy. I know it's a great neighborhood. Every for sale buyer wants to, every expired wants to. Does that make sense though? Door knocking, same thing. So if I'm out here door knocking, I'm going to knock on the door. Pete, do you know the Jones over here? Yes. Well, we have their home listed for sale. We're going to be doing a marketing event for them called an open house. You ever heard of an open house? Oh, wow, you really have? No, I'm just kidding. So, great. I wanted to give you an invitation, have you stop by, love you, have you look at it. A lot of times when somebody comes over and looks at a house, it'll give them ideas of who might like it. So we'd love to have you stop by, see what you think, give us some feedback on what you think on the price, condition, all that kind of stuff. Love to have you stop by. Now, here's what we know. Remember last Tuesday, I talked about and said The people who show up at an open house, 82% of them are gonna do something real estate related
1 year.
within a year. If he lives in the neighborhood and he shows up, what's he telling me?
He's looking to sell within a year.
I mean, here's the thing. People don't like, it's not like they're at home watching a baseball game or a football game or whatever and like, oh, this is so boring. I had to go look at an open house.
I do that, no, just kidding.
Well,
I do, seriously.
there are some,
Like I said.
great, there are some. There 18% are those people. But the problem is you guys reverse these numbers and if he shows up, you would after an open house, if I said how'd it go? Oh, I had 5 people come through, but they were all neighbors. There was nobody interested in buying the house. Well, yeah, no, they're not. The reason he shows up is not because he's bored. They're very unlikely that that's the case. What he's telling me is I'm thinking of doing it. I'll give you an example. We did this on a property on Gilmer in Sugar House area, Gilmer Drive. Did I tell you guys this story? I feel like I told it recently. But there's enough no shakes that I'll tell it anyway. We did it on Gilmer. The neighbor across the street came over, said, after they left, I asked the agent, I said, so what did they say? Oh, they said they were looking because they've got some friends from Wyoming that want to move down. And I was like, okay, maybe. I mean, that might be, but typically that's not the case. I would stay in touch with them. No, the agent argued with me. No, they're just nosy neighbors for looking for their friend. They're not. 6 months later, an agent comes into my office, says, hey, I've got an opportunity to list a property, but it's already listed. What can I do? And I said, well, you can't do anything while it's currently listed. And they said, well, can you help me look at a CMA? I said, yeah, run some numbers and then bring it and let me look at it. So they run some numbers, they bring it, they say, take a look at this. They plop down in front of me the MLS for the listing. Guess which house it was?
Across the street.
The across the street neighbors on Gilmer. And I was like, you've got to be kidding. And this agent had no knowledge of any of this. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And she was like, what? And I'm like, I know that house. And guess what? It was for sale. See, when he shows up, he's showing up because, now, some of you have seen this before, some of you have not. There is a process that people go through. It's a buyer cycle and the seller cycle. The sellers typically take a little longer to get through this cycle than a buyer does, but it's nevertheless the same. Those who have been through it, what's the first phase?
Just browsing.
Percolation phase.
Thank you. What does percolation mean?
The ideas popped in my head.
It's what?
Start swirling in there.
Yeah, think about coffee brewing, right? It percolates, right? So that's what's going on. Is typically, here's the challenge though. When somebody is in the percolation phase, they're just thinking about it. It's for me, I'll tell you, the home I live in now, I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, I can see that I went through this process. I was driving along the street, saw this new neighborhood, I'm like, oh, that's a nice looking neighborhood. That was it. Percolations, it may have already been going, but that's the first recollection I have now of that taking place. The next time I drive by with my wife in the car, I'm like, have you seen this neighborhood? That's a nice neighborhood, isn't it? Yeah, we ought to stop in sometime. I mean, this is percolation. If you would have knocked on my door during that time and said, hey Russ, when do you plan on moving? I would have said, I don't. We have no plans to move. Yet, I'm driving up along the road going, oh, I hate the traffic. I need to move further east of Bangerter Highway. I'm going to be on the east side of Bangerter Highway because I hate the traffic out here. That's all percolation. But still, even though I'm saying that, if you ask me, when do you plan on moving, what am I going to say? I'm not. Because I really, in my mind, I wasn't. This all is going on in the subconscious. It's going on below the surface. That's why we call it percolating. It's going on underneath. So when Pete walks in and says, I'm not planning on selling, the neighbors on Gilmer that show up saying, we're looking for our friends from Wyoming, it's just an excuse for them to go look at the house because they're probably in this percolation phase. They're not sure that they're going to do it. They're just thinking about it under the surface. Does that make sense? You follow me? Go ahead.
What is the best way, in your long experience, to follow up somebody in that stage?
Best thing, add them to your SOI. That's where I say add them to your SOI and just stay in touch. I've got a select group of people that I stay in touch with. I'd like to add you to that list. Would that be okay? What it means is I'll just touch base with you from time to time, keep you updated on the market, what's going on. Is that okay?
Sure.
Awesome. that won't. Then I'm just gonna stay in touch. See, if the agent who had them come through the open house stayed in touch with them, they would've got a listing. Guaranteed. They would've got a listing.
You do it once a quarter,
The staying in touch with them?
population. Yeah, the SOI that came from.
Well,
population.
on your SOI, yes, you should be calling them at least quarterly, but you should be emailing them monthly something.
Okay.
So I'd be emailing them something monthly. And ideal for me of what to email would be what's going on in the market in their neighborhood. Once a month, here's what's going on in your area.
So you separate how big of an area?
Well, even if you just did all of Salt Lake County would be fine. Here's what's going on in the Salt Lake in the market right now. So something like that. So just an excuse. The next phase, information gathering, okay? The next step in the process. So during this percolation phase, it's under the surface. They don't even know they're doing it. That's where a lot of people that you think are just looky-loos, they're percolating. They're gonna do something, it's just they're not ready yet. Information gathering is now when they're starting to gather information. They're going online, they're looking up stuff. They're really stopping it in an open house is probably in the early phases of this, meaning it's not like this is a hard line, it kind of blends. Like, you know, it's like a Venn diagram, if that makes sense, of, you know, they're in here, they don't really know where they're at. So the information gathering is when they're starting to gather information about it, and then the final phase is the active phase. This whole process here is going to be with a buyer usually 6 to 9 months, and a seller it could be as long as 12 to 18. Okay? Not always, but it could be on some sellers. I have found personally, even with the sellers, it still ends up being a lot closer to this. Does that make sense? So for me, the people who show up there, you have got to get appointments with people. When they show up to an open house, if you do it, so let's say that I had, just for the sake of these on numbers, I had 10 groups come through. 8 of those 10 are gonna do something real estate related within 6 to 9 months. The question is, are you gonna be the one they do it with? The answer is yes, if you will do one of two things. I either need to get an appointment with them that day, which is the ideal, and I'm telling you, you can get appointments with 60% of these people or 6 of those people if you will ask at least 3 times. But that's why I say you gotta put tape down and ask. If you'll ask at least 3 times, you can get appointments with 6 out of 10 of those people. And here's the other thing I've learned in the last 12 years of doing this. If you get 6 appointments out of 10, one of those will do a deal within 30 days. You can do a deal with one of them. But here's the interesting thing. The agents who only get 40% appointments, so if they're only, you know, if you're at 40%, meaning you only get 4, they tend to miss this one. That's the funny thing that I've learned. You gotta get, you have to like hold yourself accountable that I gotta get at least, I would say at least 50%, but really 60 should be kind of your goal. And I'll tell you, if you'll get 6, you'll do a deal within 30 days with one of those people. In 12 years, I've watched it over and over and over. But I'm telling you, if it's less than that, if you're 40% or less, guess who you're missing? The people who are ready to do something. Who, in fact, I'm spending way more time on this than I intended. Who's going to be the hardest of these 8, out of these 10 people, who are going to be the very hardest to get an appointment with?
When's it
We're ready to do a deal right now.
So yeah, let me ask it this way. Thank you. I'll ask it that way. This is 1, 2, or 3.
1.
Which ones do you guys think? If you think it's 1, raise your hand. I heard some of you say it, and now you're not raising your hand. Natalie?
Well, yeah, I did raise my hand.
Oh, okay. Hi. Commit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many of you think number 2 in this area is going to be the hardest to get an appointment with? 1, 2, 3, 4, sort of 5, 5, 5. Okay. How many think it's in the active phase?
No, I agree.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So tell me why. You guys that said the active phase, why?
Because I think they've already, in their mind, went through all of the things that they think that they need to do to get it done by themselves.
Perfect. That you're exactly right. This is the hardest group to get an appointment with because they're the most vulnerable, because meaning they're the closest to doing something, but also what Carrie's saying is exactly right. They've already come through this. They've already made decisions. In fact, the reason I tell you you're not going to get 82% of appointments is some of these people are so committed to an agent. In fact, there are some people who will show up that they just barely left with their agent and told their agent, yes, let's write an offer tomorrow morning. And on their way home, they're saying, let's just stop and look at one more house just to make sure. They're gonna be very hard to get an appointment with. So you're exactly right, because they've already made decisions. They've already decided they don't like guys named Pete, you know, whatever, I mean,
Happens a lot.
yeah, whatever it is, I mean, it could be, they don't, they don't like, yeah, Dan, they don't like guys with hair. I mean, who knows, whatever, you know?
Hey, I'm not too far.
So, but
We're gonna be below it.
guess who the easiest to get an appointment with is? These people. Why? Why would these be the easiest people?
Cause they have no.
They're interested.
They need direction.
They don't know any information.
And they're not really concerned. Go ahead, Kristen.
I was just gonna say they're kind of trying to transition to the information, so that's kind of pushing them to say, okay, now I'll know what I'm looking for.
Okay, good.
I think they seem like the hardest because a lot of times they themselves don't know how serious they are about thinking about it. And so as long as you're asking the right questions, I think that's by far the easiest.
Yeah, these are the easiest to get an appointment with because they're not worried. They think they're not selling. So in their mind, and what they'll even say to you, if you want to waste your time doing a CMA for my house, go ahead and do it. You just, I mean, that's fine. Yeah, if you want to come over, that's fine. I mean, how long are you going to be, you know? Because they're like, if you want to, whatever, yeah, that's fine. Because they think they're not going to do anything.
I think that's true because I'm calling FSBOs, and it seems like when I'm calling them like maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the FSBO, they pull it off the market, and then I get an appointment, and so we go down there, show them, and they're going, oh, yeah, we're still thinking, you know. And I think you have to work longer with those people, like they said, oh, we decided that we need to change the carpet, we decided
So
we need
yeah,
to paint.
great people to throw into your SOI and just say, great, let me just stay in touch with you.
Yeah, that's what
Yep.
we're doing.
So as you do this, what I will tell you, these are the easiest people, these are the hardest, but here's what I'll tell you. If you had 10 people come through, you got 60% appointments or 6 appointments, you're gonna do a deal with one of them within 30 days. I've just watched it over and over and over. Now, here's the other thing I will tell you. In terms of it being a waste of time or not, here's the other thing I'll tell you. If you will focus on Sugar House area, which this is gonna be a challenge because it's in our current environment, there's not a ton of listings, but ideal place to do this would be Sugar House. Why? Anybody ever done an open house in Sugar House? How many groups came through? Do you remember?
Crazy.
Yeah, it will, if you'll do what I'm telling you, you'll go out and door knock, at least 100 people talk to, and invite and put out at least 20 signs, you'll get, it is not uncommon to see 20 or 30 groups come through on, now stop and think about that for a minute. If you converted 6% of appointments and you, let's just say 20 people came through, that's 12 appointments, right? And if what I'm telling you is true, and it is, you're gonna do 2 deals in 30 days off of that one open house. Does that sound like a waste of time to you? So for me, here's what I've just learned. The further out of Salt Lake downtown that you get, and really probably Sugar House or the Avenues is the 2 best places. The further out you go from there, the less groups. Now, with that being said, Jesus left, dang, I think he was one of them. Jesus and Clint did one in Draper, and they had, I think, 12 groups come through. So, I mean, 12 even if you got 6 and do a deal in 30 days, Clint's got people he's still working with from that.
Okay, Sugar House, 3 houses on the same street for sale at the same time.
Uh-huh.
One of them, which was more attractive, had like no one. A couple of neighbors went through. One of them was a good house and it sold, but they didn't do anything. The third one was done by a Caldwell Banker guy, and on his sign it said Great Scott, another sale, something. If you know him, I wanna know who it is.
If it's who I'm,
Literally hordes. He did none of the door knocking, no invitations, hordes
Yeah, is
of
it,
people came through. What did he do that
yeah,
3
it's,
houses up the street?
I can't think of his name. His last name is Jack Perry.
Jack
Oh, yeah,
Perry is
he's
Great Scott.
Yeah.
What did he do?
Well, I'm not
He
positive it's Great
literally-
Scott. I don't know. There might be a different Scott, but
Literally hordes of
But-
people.
but one of the
Every
okay,
time
good.
he
Yes,
had
here's
a
what he. So I trained him on this. if it's who I'm thinking, if it's Jack, would you know who Jack Perry is?
Yeah, I
I'm
like
sure
that,
that's
so
right.
I see
Yeah.
his house, his signs are everywhere.
So part of it is he does it every weekend. Every weekend he's doing them. Here's the downside to him though. I love the guy. I trained him, but he will not ask for appointments. He waits for people to just ask him. So he misses out on so many deals. But what he does, number one, he friends all the people on Facebook. So he gets them so he can do a friend on it, and then every open house he does, he shares it on Facebook and he emails the people, he gets their email address. He's got just a ton of people looking for houses that he just emails over and over. He could be so much more productive than what he is, but I'm not positive that's the one. But yeah, I mean, he's done it enough that he's built his name to where people just know who he is because he does it enough. So for me, yeah, I would focus there, and that's just it. In fact, he's the one that you'll hear me tell a story as we get closer. Well, you guys won't because you'll all be gone by then. But day after Christmas. Christmas was on a Friday. He did an open house Saturday after Christmas, the day after Christmas. He had 50 groups come through the day after Christmas. And everybody said nobody else is doing it. So he got, and then the next week on New Year's, because New Year's Day is would be a week after, but it's like,
So is it because?
but New Year's Day would have been the Saturday again though, right? If
Yeah.
Christmas is on a Friday.
Yeah.
He did it on New Year's Day, had another 50 groups come through. So he had 100 groups come. Look at the numbers of this now. If he did it right, there would be 60 appointments and 6 deals that should have come out of that. But he wasn't getting appointments. He waits for people to say to him, can you meet with us? Can you help us? Now he's doing business. I don't want to take away that it's working for him, but he could be so much more productive. Somebody had a question. No? All right, anyway. So here's the last thing on that why I think this is good. From when I first started in the business, you needed to be at the office to prospect. In today's world, you can prospect from anywhere. So to me, here's the other thing, a couple things on this. One is, I think this is a great thing on an open house. Go out and do all your door knocking, like for the week or even 2 weeks. You can do it 2 weeks in advance, is really what I like. 2 weeks going out, because then you get to use that as an excuse for 2 whole weeks to be out knocking on doors. So talk to 200 people about it and invite them to this. Then, on the day of the open house, I'm going to show up there, and what should you do if nobody's coming? So let's say, because it is going to happen, you may find a property that is just a dog that nobody wants, or people have seen it already, or whatever, then nobody shows up. How can you do this and have it not be a waste of time?
Make phone calls.
Yeah. See, if you do this right, you should be here making phone calls on this, either your SOI or call people or call around in the neighborhood. It's just another excuse to be on the phone calling and saying, we're doing an open house, do you know anybody that should be coming by and taking a look at it right now? See, if you do this right, it can be a great way to, instead of remember I talked on Tuesday about how we used to have floor time that offices, because people before the internet would actually just show up or call in to the office? Ultimately, what you're doing is kind of treating this like that in terms of just sit there and do a call. So there's one other guy that I've trained that I had one day just kind of in passing brought up this point of you can make prospecting calls from anywhere. You don't really have to be at the office anymore, right? So I said, why not even just find a house that the sellers are at work, and you could go this afternoon from 2 o'clock until dusk and just sit at their house and make phone calls. Throw out open house signs and sit and make phone calls at their house instead of here at the office. Sit and make phone calls at their house, and then when somebody shows up, you stop and go get an appointment with them. Does that make sense? So he started doing that where he does them now, every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, he will go and just he's using his own listings now, but he just goes and throws up open house signs and goes and sits there and makes his prospecting calls.
I just wear my badge everywhere, and so I'm like a band mom.
Mhm.
And the band teacher referred us to the new band teacher for the middle school. He's the high school. And also, it was so funny, I was at Utah Youth Philharmonic. My kids go to Utah Youth Philharmonic. And Kay Sykes saw me. She goes, oh my gosh, you worked for there. And so we became best friends now. And so, people know who you are.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So, now I lost my train of thought.
Sitting in the open house,
Oh, and don't be afraid of doing it during the week. I guess that's kind of where I was gonna go with it too, is it, he sits there and he picks up, I don't know that he gets as much traffic, but you stop and think about in today's world, there's plenty of people out driving around right now, right? And I had one other chart I was gonna show you, but I'll save it for another time, on that, in terms of like, there are people out looking right now, that if you were sitting there at an open house, they would come in and you could capture them. So anyway, honestly, this can be a really good and powerful tool. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. This can be a very powerful tool. Now, here's the thing. In the long run, you're probably you're mostly gonna pick up buyers from this. I mean, I do wanna say that. You're gonna mostly get buyers from this, but if you will go and do all the prospecting and the other stuff, it is not gonna be uncommon, especially if I'm finding the for sale by owners and expireds in the area. And when I say area, it could be 2-3 blocks away even if you could even be 4 or 5 blocks away. It's just an excuse to be knocking on their door, right? So I can go out and do that. You will start to pick up listings. The key to getting listings is what Jack Perry's doing. Because he does those open houses over and over and over again, there are sellers now that just come to him and say, we want you to list our home because we know you're gonna do an open house every weekend on it. So you wanna be a little careful with that because long term, I'll tell you guys right now, 20 years later, I'm not doing open houses. So long term, but it's a great way to fund your way into listings. Does that make sense? Buyers are a great way for you to keep this money supply coming until you can build up the listing piece of the business. Does that make sense? So that's what, to me, ultimately you want to use this. So even though I'm saying 20 years into it, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm talking to you guys about. If my son, who is in Mexico City right now on a mission, when he gets home, if he says, Dad, I want to do real estate, guess what I'm going to tell him to do? I'm going to say, let me teach you about a bicycle. And I'm going to draw a picture of him. But for me, honestly, this is a great way to do it because you can tie everything, all of this other stuff can be tied together into this hub. And can it be a waste of time? Only if you show up and do nothing there. If you show up with the idea of if nobody comes, see, the truth is, if you do this right, before the open house even starts, you should have picked up leads from your door knocking. That's really the truth. This is just the icing on the cake. If these people show up, then you gotta just tell yourself, I have to get appointments with 60%. Don't believe them when they walk in saying, oh, I'm just a nosy neighbor. You have to say, oh, okay, great, well, awesome, how long have you lived in the area? But I still wanna get an appointment for something. I'll tell you, even if I can get an appointment to go sit down with him that has nothing to do with real estate, maybe Pete comes through and we end up talking about fly fishing, and I go, oh, I got some pretty cool flies that work really well on whatever river you like to fish on. When would be a good time I could drop some of those off to you? If I can schedule an appointment for that, I'm telling you, I'll still find out when I get over there and drop off those flies, all of a sudden now, because we've connected, when I go drop off those flies, he'll tell me, you know what, Russ, we actually have been thinking about selling our house. Even though he's gonna show up saying, we're not thinking about selling. But I come back and drop off these flies, or whatever it was, the excuse I had to come over that wasn't real estate related, he's gonna then open up to me and say, actually once the kids are out of school in the next 6 months or whatever, next year, even if it's next year for me, great. I got a select group of people I stay in touch with. I wanna add you to that list. And then I'm gonna stay in touch with him, because I'm okay if he doesn't do anything for a year. I'm gonna stay in touch. I just set up a deal for a year from now. I want to remember the prospecting on 2 parallel tracks. I want to set that up at the same time I'm looking for the now business. Because a year from now, he'll be now business. So, sound good?
Good.
Any other questions?
There's a for sale by owner expired, what's okay meaning there?
Door
Oh, that's a D.
Okay.
Door knocks. Yeah, so I was going to go through some of the other things.
What was the other one?
Oh, this one could be SOI. So yeah, great way to work your SOI, especially as a new agent. That's the other thing too. As a new agent, so I got 7 seconds. As a new agent, your SOI doesn't trust you. Let's just tell the truth. Right now, they don't trust that you know what you're doing. The best way for you to build confidence into them would be to do this as well, and then send them invitations. So make up flyers to come to your open house. And then even if it's not your listing, so you're doing it on somebody else's listing, send them an invitation and invite them to come and stop by. If they come and stop by, they're either just a really good friend or they're thinking about doing something real estate related. So invite them to come. But here's the other thing is, let's say that I did this, I invited my SOI, and that property now goes under contract. I would send out to my SOI an email follow-up of, hey, just want to let you guys know, thanks for coming and supporting me and helping me on that open house. The property actually sold. By doing that, you just have told your SOI, even if the property sold for, you're not saying I sold it, you say, if you just said, thanks for coming and stopping by, whatever, just want to let you know the property is now sold, they're gonna think it was because of your efforts.
I've been doing.
Which then gives them confidence in you. I mean, that's where for me, does somebody need the room?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, we're done. So that's where for me, if you do this right, it doesn't have to be a waste of time. The way most agents do it, it is a waste of time. With that said, somebody needs the room. I don't know why it's such a popular room this week. Have a good one. Go do some deals. Have some good news for me on Tuesday.
Oh, I am. I just need to stop those dollars.
I think I'm gonna take these classes in like 7 years or so. He did it, I didn't know.
Yeah, so here's what I would say is, I probably would say, depending on your finances, so if you're wanting to get some money,
You make
You
everybody.
didn't answer my
worst case scenario,
text.
I mean, you'll be able to get a sign.
I wrote you yesterday.
So I would kind of say, wait, the flip side of that is sometimes I would say, just buy one, so
I
you
like
at least have one,
8:30.
but, and then that way, once